hello, Ali.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you about your stunning new book, The Night Hunt. Can you introduce it? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so The Night Hunt is kind of my little romantasy Greek mythology inspired book about a immortal girl who feeds off of fear. And she essentially is on the run from the gods who killed her family, so quite lighthearted. And she hides in the shadows and kind of feeds off nightmares. And then one day the gods are alerted to where she is, and she's suddenly on the run from them, and she has to team up with a death god called Silas, who offers her a very interesting bargain on how they can both escape their fates. But they simply have to work together in order to do that.
And there's a little bit of I want to call it enemies to lovers, but they never really hate each other at the beginning, do they?
No, I just call it I always say kissy, kissy, stabby, stabby, but it's just light stabbing, just a little stabby, stabby here and there. Don't get so offended. Just
There's
a little
a dagger
murder
on the front of the book, so
yes, spoiler alert.
Is implied.
I mean, he is a death god, so he is kind of my take on Hermes mixed with Hades. So yeah, Silas is very much kind of a reluctant death god and looking to escape his past. And one of the things about Silas is that he actually can't kill, even though he's a death god. And so he needs someone to do his killing for him. Enter our monstrous girl who literally feeds off of fear. And so it makes for quite the duo.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the banter they have throughout. I've actually made a list of everything they call each other throughout the book. And I will post that at some point.
Okay.
But it's a lot of fun seeing that the pipeline for cursed little messenger to she is made from the gods. I'm obsessed.
Well, that was one of my favorite things about the relationship is Atia kind of hides what she looks like, hides her monstrous form. And so everyone always sees her as human, but then Silas sees the monster within. And she always thinks if anyone could see that I was a monster, they wouldn't think I was beautiful. But when Silas sees her, he just sees this amazing, powerful woman, and he wants her to embrace that monstrous side rather than hide it. And for Atia, that opens up a whole new world for her, to quote Aladdin.
I love them so much.
What I'm hearing though, when you say about banter, is that I'm really funny.
You are.
So I do enjoy that.
The humour really comes across. Yes. I love it. But also there's a bit of an ensemble cast in this, right?
Yes.
I kind of see them as the fantasy version of the Scooby-Doo gang.
Ooh. So who's Fred and who's Daphne?
I mean,
I feel like Silas should be Daphne.
But can you talk a bit more about the other characters who make up this gang of theirs?
Yes. So we have Tristan, who's kind of the scholarly type, and he is the one that's kind of, I guess, part of me, the vicarious book reader. Oh. I guess he's on the voice of the reader where he opens his books, he's like, right, there's a problem, I know how to solve it. And he also always has a piece of cake. So he's very much the cake and books guy, aka he is all of us. And he brings the human element to this very monstrous story of you have this death god and you have this immortal girl who feeds off fear. And so he helps them both find their humanity and find those vulnerabilities in each other. And these are two people who have lived for a very long time and are not used to relying on anyone and are used to closing themselves off. And so Tristan kind of provides that way for them to help open themselves up and help realize that being vulnerable isn't always a weakness, and that actually you can find strength in people that you love, and that love in itself makes you stronger. So yeah, Tristan's very much my little book boy who makes everyone happy. And then we also have Killian, who is kind of a surprise addition to the cast. Spoiler, I don't know. Not that much of a surprise.
Yeah,
but he kind of comes in semi early on, and he's kind of a bridge between the monstrousness of Atia and Silas and the humanity of Tristan. He's kind of very much in between. He's half monster, half human. So he helps bring them together and just create this found family aspect, because he has very much had a family but then had to step away from them. So he understands what family is and he knows what to expect from a family. And yeah, I think together they just all bring out the best and the worst sides of each other. They bring out the stabby parts, but they also bring out the huggy parts, and they're able to have that humor with each other that's not built on defense mechanisms. It's actually just a nice joking ease to their interactions.
Yeah, I love the representations of family they all have. It's
very different ideas of what family means to each of them, and yet they're able to find that meaning of family within each other. Oh, that's so deep.
I know. No, it's so nice. Yeah, I feel like everyone can find themselves represented in each of those characters.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I very much don't want to tell like one person's story. I mean, Attia and Silas are the main characters, but I wanted to tell different people's stories and hopefully make different people feel seen and show different experiences, and how it doesn't matter kind of where you come from, it matters where you're going and who you're going there with, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for writing a fantasy where hunger is represented. I love how often they talk about needing a little snack.
Especially for Adja, because she's just kind of like has some of her monstrousness stripped away a little bit. And so she starts to have these human feelings. She's like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. And I'll eat something. She's like, I can't eat nightmares anymore. They're like, no, you weirdo, have some cake. She's like, oh my God, what is cake? When she discovers it, she's like, I can never go back.
Yeah, she feels like she's been robbed because she's never had cake. Like,
I think one of my favorite things in the book is when they're like, murders and pastry. Yeah. This is the vibe of our group, and we're rolling with it. Amazing.
And then speaking of other tropes in the book, we've talked about found family. We've talked about not enemies. What did you call it?
Stabby, stabby, kissy, kissy. I'm more like, it's kind of like reluctant allies to lovers is what I kind of like. Of like, I don't really want to be working with you, or I feel like I should hate you is more than I actually hate you. Like, they've both been taught, like Attia's been taught that Silas works for the gods killed her family, therefore he is her enemy. Yeah. And Silas is a death god. He kind of ferries human souls and cleans up monsters' messes, and he's been taught that monsters are just monsters and nothing else. So they're very much told they have to hate each other, and then they start to work together and they're like, do we though? Because we're a lot better together. And maybe that's why we've been told that we should hate each other, because they realize that when we actually team up and work together, we can create real change, and the people in charge don't want that.
Yeah, all the pieces start to fall together. And I guess there's an element of like the chosen one in there too, in Attia, right? She's the only one of her kind.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I feel like the way I approached that was, for Attia, there's a lot of pressure on her to live up to her family's legacy, and I didn't want to approach it in kind of a, she is the only one that can defeat the gods, because that's not technically true. It's more that she has the will to do it, and she has met these people along the way that give her the strength to do it, because she carries the weight of her family's expectations, which I think people who aren't necessarily immortal creatures can identify with, is that she has her family's weight of who she should be, how she should act on her, and then even the human world thinks, well, you're a monster, so you should act this way and you should only be this, and then the gods are saying this. And so Attia is very much, starts at the beginning of the book thinking she has to be who everyone expects her to be, and that she can't be anyone different. She's not allowed to be anyone different, and that's her only destiny. And so part of the book isn't really her kind of finding her destiny as like a chosen one. It's more her carving out her own destiny and being like, well, this is who I want to be and this is what I want to do.
And she sets her own rules.
Exactly. As thing, she's like, they're like, oh, this is how you should do it. She's like, no.
How about another way?
Yeah. My way's better.
Okay, so speaking about tropes.
My favourite things.
Kiss, marry, kill.
Okay.
Any three tropes.
Kiss, marry, kill any of the three characters.
Any tropes in books in
general. I've got kill it. Okay, I've got kiss, marry, kill tropes themselves. All right. I want to kiss enemies to lovers. I'm sorry, but I want to kill love triangles.
Let's talk about it.
I can't be dealing with it. Do you know what? It's just too much of a roller coaster of emotions, because I'm like, oh, they introduce a love interest. I'm like, oh my God, I love them so much. Then introduce someone else. I'm like, but that's my dude over there. And then the person starts making eyes at the other person. I'm like, but my dude over there. And then this dude suddenly turns out into a bad dude. And I'm like, God, there's too many dudes. Like, I just need one. I need focus.
It is a lot. It's a lot to juggle.
Just too
You're
much.
On the ride.
I just want to find one person and be invested in them, and then read into every little behaviour and every little tick they have and be like, oh yeah, he twitched his jaw. Oh, that means he's in love with her. But then another guy twitches his jaw, and then I don't know how to feel, and it confuses me.
I've just seen a really big insight into you as a person.
I'm a simple person, okay? I want the one intense love interest who secretly loves her when he is meant to hate her.
Yeah. I don't think the love triangle is a popular trope. I
thought the opposite. Every time I see TikTok, people are all saying it. I'm like, but then I also feel like sometimes the love triangle trope falls into that everyone loves the main character angle. And I don't like that. I kind of want my main characters to be a bit abrasive and to everyone to be like unsure of how they feel about them. And so maybe that's why I don't love triangles.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just jealous that 20 guys aren't just falling in love with me.
Yeah, that's not my life.
Yeah.
So why should it be anyone else's?
It's so unrealistic in this world of dragons and monsters. The love triangle is the most unrealistic part.
Okay, and then the last one was marry.
Marry. What would I marry?
You've already given away enemies to lovers.
Only one bed. That's
Classic.
what I'm going to marry.
You've got a bit of that in your
do
book.
have a bit of that in my book. And it's one of my favourite scenes to write in the book. I mean, I won't spoil it, but it's because it's very much a moment where both characters get to be really vulnerable and intimate with each other, but not necessarily with like kissing or anything like that, but just like they have a moment of quiet. There's only one bed. Everyone else is asleep apart from them. There's a window with stars coming through and someone might come in at any moment and kill them, and yet they're just lying there and having their first honest conversation. And it's almost like in the dead of night with all those shadows around, the conversation's not really real. If they have it at night, it doesn't count. And so they get to be really open and honest with each other for once. And I just loved that take on it, because it's not even them thinking about like their hormones or this, because sometimes only one bed is like, oh, I want to kiss him, which I love, don't get me wrong, but this is more like, that's all well and good, but actually them being open with each other for the first time makes it one of the most romantic scenes I feel like I've ever written, even if there's not necessarily any physical intimacy in that scene.
100%.
When I was writing it, I was like, this is so romantic.
It really is. I felt exactly the same way. I've not seen that spin on Only One Bed.
Yeah.
Usually it's like the device for pining.
Yeah,
you know,
or the
like,
lead up to the first kiss or something. But I was like, no, I want the device to be like them opening up about their sad, sad lives and them looking at each other and being like, you're a sad boy, I'm a sad girl. Vibes.
Yeah, and there's a real shift in their relationship after that point too.
Yeah, I think it really changes how they see each other, and not only that, but how they see themselves, because they start to see themselves through each other's eyes. And yeah, I think Silas has one of my favourite quotes at the end of that chapter about like, well, I won't say what the quote is, can I say?
Go on.
Just saying like he wonders kind of which of them will ruin the other first, because he had this prophecy of them like ruining each other's lives. And as he looks at her, he's like, yeah, she could totally ruin my life. But yet he says it in the most romantic way possible.
I underline that part in my copy.
It's not like you could ruin my life. It's like, wow, you could ruin my life. And I want you to.
He was born to have a Twitter account.
Yeah, 100%. Or like a Tumblr.
Yeah.
I feel like Silas would be so good on Tumblr.
God. And this is your 5th fantasy book.
Yeah. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah.
Crazy.
But yeah. I don't know what happened, but 5 just came out.
Well, what is it about the genre that keeps you coming back to fantasy?
I feel like it's that whole creating a new world, but being able to liken it to our own without it being, here, this is the message that I'm trying to send you. Yeah. It's more a way to like do things like commentary and comment on maybe our world, maybe our politics, or like social things, and not have it be this blaring flashing light. I also feel like fantasy is the perfect escapism in books, because it is fantasy, it is this whole new world, there are all these mythical creatures and monsters, and so it's a way for people to really lose themselves in a book and lose themselves in a story and kind of forget about the rest of the world. And I just think fantasy is magical that way.
It is, and you do it beautifully.
Thank you very much. I think it's going to this is why I used to love The Sims, because I'm just there like playing God and puppet master, ha ha ha. And now I can do it with like monsters and gods and Greek mythology.
Yeah, and I love that you've got that kind of monster thread woven throughout all of your books.
Yeah, it's weird because To Kill a Kingdom is a siren princess who's like ripping out hearts of princes, just going about her day, and then she gets cursed into humanity. She's like, what is this? And then Princess of Souls is like my take on Rapunzel, about a soul-stealing princess who can predict people's deaths and then, takes their souls and feeds them to this king. And then we have the Crooked Crew, who aren't necessarily monsters, but they literally carry magic in their pockets. And then we have the Night Hunt. So yeah, I'm starting to feel like I like writing about villains, anti-heroes,
slightly angry women.
Yeah, well, I just think if you're writing about an actual hero, then their journey is done right, because they've got to the point where they're a good person making good decisions. Yeah. And I want to see their journey to how they became that person. Like, how did you decide to make good decisions? How did you kind of escape that selfishness that we all have? How have you overcome all of your like past trauma? How are you working through that? Like, that's the story that I want to see and I want to tell. And I want to see people turn into the hero rather than them. They're already the hero. They're already making all the good decisions. I'm like, I can't relate. Where are your mistakes? Where are your kind of bad traits. I want to see all those imperfections and people learning to either overcome them or even just accept them and say, you know what, this is who I am. It's not necessarily something I need to escape or fix or work on. I can just accept who I am, the good parts and the bad parts, and know that together they make me who I am.
Yeah, almost like starting morally grey, but then turning it into your own colour.
Exactly. Oh, I like that.
Thank you. And is fantasy something you find yourself reading in your own time, watching?
Yes, I am a pure fantasy reader, really. I don't read much contemporary.
Really?
Yeah, I did creative writing at university and I wrote pure contemporary. I think my dissertation was a contemporary book, and then I read like one fantasy book and I was like, right, well, this is who I was meant to be. And I haven't read a fantasy book not in ages, but it's very, very rare. It's almost like my little kind of palate cleanser in between fantasy books of like, every 15 fantasy books, I'll pop one contemporary in there.
Yeah.
And then I feel like, oh, my reading style was so varied. another 20 fantasy books.
Do you remember what that one fantasy book was that you read that was like the decider for you?
What was it? I think it was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Because that was my first interest. Because that was like, I say fantasy-like, because it's set in our world, but with mystical elements. And then from there, I went on to just get more fantasy and more fantasy and more fantasy.
Yeah, I do. I love a fantasy set in kind of a contemporary setting. I find that those two next to each other really interesting.
It's kind of like, then you don't have to do like as much world building from the out because people think they know the rules, and then you just come in and you break the rules, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not making them, I'm just ruining them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was something I wanted to ask you because I love the first line in your book, which is fear tastes like spice honey. And I wanted to ask you what some other emotions would taste like.
Ooh.
So I'm going to throw some emotions at you and you just tell me what taste that would be.
I'm going to forget the names of any foods now you've asked me this, just so you're aware.
Yeah, I want to see what your like natural... Okay, joy.
Ooh, cotton candy. I don't know why I've said the American version.
Oh yeah.
What's it called? Candy floss. I'm like, what's it called?
Anxiety.
Oh, like an espresso with no sugar.
Ooh, that was really good. Calm.
Calm. I was gonna say a grape. just a little grape. Or the popping candy.
Oh, nice. And then two more. Confusion.
That should have been popping candy, shouldn't it, really, to be honest? Confusion tastes like tomato juice because it's a juice, but it's savoury.
You're doing well on the spot.
Okay, good.
And then the last one, very fitting, hunger.
Okay, so this is like a weird... I feel like hunger tastes like moussaka.
I'm going to need you to unpack that.
Just because it's just like hearty and delicious and it's got everything. It's got layers.
True.
Not to quote Shrek, but you know, it has layers. So you've got a little bit of cheese, you've got some veg, you've got some meat, you've got some like pasta-y bits, you've got a bit of potato, like it's everything, it's all encompassing.
Nice. Also, I love that we've quoted Aladdin and Shrek.
I'm into cartoons.
What's going to come next? And then I do want to ask, do you have any tips for aspiring writers? You've talked about writing a little bit.
Yes. My biggest tip is don't write linearly. Don't think of a book, I guess, as like a whole thing. You have to do chapter 1, 2, 3. Don't be afraid to write chapter 5, chapter 10. Write whatever parts inspire you best first. You don't have to write in order. And even when you're writing a chapter, don't worry about writing that chapter in order. A lot of the times, when I found that I used to have like proper writer's block, I got to a point in the chapter, I was like, oh, I don't know how to get from this point to this point. So I just skipped that and went straight to the other point. And then later on, I'd go in and be like, oh, all I have to do is do this filler bit. And it's just easier if you approach a book and even a chapter itself as just little pieces of a puzzle that you have to fit together. And it's less daunting than being like, I have to write 3,000 words for chapter 2. No, you don't. Just write like 200 of this scene and then skip a bunch. Write 200 of this scene, then go back, and I find that's an easier way to work.
Breaking it down,
less
overwhelming.
Write the bits that you want to write first, write all the enjoyable bits, and then the bits that you have to go in and fill in. It's much easier to fill in the blanks rather than just have an entire blank before you.
I don't know if this is a mean question, but which of your books did you enjoy writing the most?
Ooh.
Look them all in the eye.
They're judging me. Okay, I have 2 answers for this. Can I have 2?
Of course.
Out of 5? Okay, so first, I really enjoyed writing The Night Hunt because I got to write a death god. And that for me was so much fun, to write Death himself, to write this elusive character who you never see and actually give him a physical form, make him a him for starters, and then work through what that would be like to be someone who watches people live their lives and die and go through this cycle of lives, but yet you're there unchanging, and write what that kind of a person would crave and how kind of, I want to say manipulative they would be, but how they would be so good at getting what they want because they would have watched people over centuries, and how to write a character like that but also make them very likable and very swoon-worthy was so fun for me. And then my second would be City of Spells, because it was my first ever sequel, because all my other books are standalones, and then City of Spells was the sequel to Into the Crooked Place. So it was really fun for me to be like, I've created a world and now I get to go back to it. And so that was, a lot of joy to be like, I've written these characters, I've had them have development, now I get to make them suffer even more and get to expand on the world I've written. And so, that was really fun.
Fantasy lovers like a bit of extra content as well, don't they? So
this is why with Princess of Souls too, it's not a sequel, but it's a companion, I guess, to Killer Kingdom. So if you wanted more of that world, it's different characters, kind of a different evil princess. But if you wanted more of that world, there's those little bits in there. So it's always fun to just revisit and add little Easter eggs, and then maybe a throwaway line I mentioned into Killer Kingdom, expand on that into a whole idea and make it half a book, which is essentially what Princess of Souls is. I mean, there's a kingdom that's mentioned as a throwaway into Killer Kingdom, and Princess of Souls, I was like, I'm going to make a book out of that kingdom.
Did that thought cross your mind as you wrote it in book 1?
Well, book 1, I did write 100 kingdoms, and then I wrote mythology and lore for each of them, and I only used I think 5 into Killer Kingdom.
Oh wow.
So then I had 95 more, which I was like, I should do something with this. So I didn't necessarily plan a sequel, but I had planned out all these different kingdoms and kind of had in the back of my mind, if I do want to revisit this world, I've got all the kind of the baseline there to go back. So when it came to do Prince of Souls, and I was like, I really want to write about an evil Rapunzel kind of looking out at a world and never being able to touch it because I'm trapped in this tower. What kind of a world would that be? And I was like, well, a world of evil princesses. I've done that before.
Yeah. You've kind of done that in The Night Hunt. I
Yeah.
feel like. Do you have a world that you were like, oh, I could do more in? Or that doesn't feel like a spoiler. There are kingdoms kind of mentioned in The Night Hunt.
Yes, so Night Hunt's a very big world. I like writing not just one kingdom. I like writing my characters traveling across the world and meeting all different people and having all different experiences and having characters that come from different experiences, because I feel like that's more reflective of our world. It's pretty boring if everyone's just in one city, everyone's from the same place, everyone has the same experience. I'm being funny, but that's just one character, you split them into 5. So I really like to write these grand, vast worlds. And that does help me be like, okay, well, if I ever want to come back to this world, if readers want me to come back, there's so much there that isn't touched upon, because there's so many places that they travel and so many people that they meet. They could be like, a little story here, a little story, or even just short stories, little snippets.
Okay, so we've got a little segment which is the Hotkey Hot Seat. So I'm giving you 2 options. Just tell me which one you'd rather go for.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Paperback or hardback?
Paperback, 'cause it's bendy.
Audio or ebook?
Audio. I don't like ebooks, sorry.
Sun or snow?
Did you say sun?
Sun? Sunshine or snow?
Oh, snow.
Autumn or spring?
Spring.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Books or films?
Books.
Crazy. Podcasts or playlists?
Podcasts.
Cats or dogs?
I own a dog, but cats.
City or nature?
Nature.
And that's it.
Oh, wow. Not through them. Just to say though as well, hardbacks I do love, but paperbacks are dog-eared pages and it's bendy and it's...
Yeah. Oh, I love a floppy book.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.